Alrighty, and happy Tuesday. It's March the 12th, Hebrews 4, 1 through 11. It's a long passage. Bear with me as I read it. Therefore, since the promise to enter his rest remains, let us beware that none of you be found to have fallen short. For we also have received the good news just as they did, but the message they heard did not benefit them, since they were not united with those who heard it in faith. For we who have believed enter the rest in keeping with what he has said. So I swore in my anger, they will not enter my rest, even though his works have been finished since the foundation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in this way, and on the seventh day God rested from all his works. Again, in that passage he says they will never enter my rest. Therefore, since it remains for some to enter it, and those who formerly received the good news did not enter because of disobedience, he again specifies a certain day, today. He specified this speaking through David after such a long time. Today, if you hear my voice, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day. Therefore, a Sabbath rest remains for God's people. Hear that verse. A Sabbath rest remains for God's people. For the person who has entered his rest has rested from his own works, just as God did from his. Let us then make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one will fall into the same pattern of disobedience. All right, now, a promised rest. See, when the writer writes these words, God reveals that a promised rest remains. So if the rest were a day, they would have had it. If the rest were a land, they would have had it. If the rest were a nation, they would have had it. Those of the Old Testament who did not enter God's rest did not enter because they did not receive it by faith. See, God's rest is an intangible condition of faith. Now, here's a difficulty we experience. You know, we don't work because of faith. Our faith is not like this obligation to work. Our faith produces works. You see, it is because of the joy of our faith. It is because of the condition of our relationship with God, which we're going to talk about. It produces in us this desire to do. You see, we live in this work culture and society. And so when I say that our works are produced out of our faith, you see, we live in this kind of, like I mentioned yesterday, this 40-hour work week. You know, you don't say, well, I'm a Christian, so I've got to put in 12 hours this week. You don't say, because I'm a Christian and I have faith, I've got to work Mondays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. No, you see, what is the promise of God to us, his people, by faith, in both the Old and the New Testament? What is it that God's promised us? He's promised that relationship. He's promised to be our God, and we are to be his people. The promise is the restoration of relationship. We get to be the family of God again. In verse 2, it's explained that the people of Israel did not receive rest because they did not trust the word of God. They didn't have faith in what God had said to them. You see, we who have believed have entered rest already. That's what this passage is telling us. That by faith we have entered rest. We don't have to work. We don't have to do works to earn a place in God's family. We are gifted and given, and we receive that salvation, that redemption. And one of the things we receive by faith is rest. We have entered rest in Jesus. Whew. Let's take a nap. No, see you tomorrow.